I'm Natalie Harper, and I'm 31. There are certain mornings you can replay in your head like a scene from a movie. Only in the replay, you keep searching the frame for the exact second your life tilts. Mine started with a skillet, butter snapping soft and loud in the pan, the kind of sound that makes a kitchen feel safe. The smell of toast, the hum of the fridge. My hair twisted up with a clip because I'd learned the hard way that loose strands and heat don't mix. And then my boyfriend walked in like someone had unplugged him. Evan, 28. 2 years together, 6 months living in my apartment. My lease, my furniture, my routines that had quietly reshaped themselves around his. He didn't say good morning. He didn't even look at the eggs. He just stood there, hands braced on the counter like he needed the granite to keep him upright. Natalie, he said, and my name sounded wrong in his mouth. Thin, frayed. I turned the stove down, not off, down. Like I was bargaining with the universe. If I didn't click it all the way, maybe whatever was coming wouldn't fully arrive. What happened? I asked. His throat bobbed. His eyes were glassy, fixed somewhere past my shoulder, like he couldn't face me directly and still get the words out. It's about Jenna. The name hit the kitchen like a dropped plate. Jenna, his ex-girlfriend. Not the we dated in college and it ended forever kind of ex. The kind with loose ends. The kind who still watched his stories sometimes. The kind he swore he didn't talk to anymore, except for that one awkward check-in months ago. Except for the time she accidentally texted him when she was drunk. Except for the way her name always seemed to exist in the air around him, like perfume you couldn't fully scrub out. I didn't move. I just waited. Evan swallowed hard. She called me this morning. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, steady and loud, like it was trying to drown out whatever he was about to say. She said she's pregnant. The pan hissed. A bubble of butter popped. Normal sounds, like the world was mocking me. I blinked once. Okay. He flinched, like he expected me to scream. I didn't. Not because I was calm, because something inside me had gone very, very still. And, he continued, rushing now, words spilling out fast, she said she needs a DNA test. I turned the spatula over slowly, watching egg fold into itself, yellow and soft and completely unaware it was being cooked in a moment that would split my life into before and after. A DNA test, I repeated. Evan nodded, eyes wet, because she doesn't know if it's mine or... He couldn't finish, like saying the other name would make it real. But I already knew. Kyle, I said quietly. His eyes snapped to mine. So the orbit had a name, not a shadow, not a vague friend, a person. Kyle, Jenna's work friend. The one who texted her good morning. The one who always seemed to be just around in her stories, laughing in the background, a shoulder or a hand that appeared in photos like an accident. Evan's face crumpled. She said it was just once, maybe twice. She swears she didn't mean for any of this to happen. I set the spatula down. It made a soft clink against the pan, so small, so polite, like a person trying not to interrupt their own heartbreak. I turned the stove off completely this time. Then I pulled out a chair and sat, because my knees suddenly didn't feel like they wanted to keep negotiating with gravity. Start from the beginning, I said. Evan paced once, then stopped, like an animal trapped between escape and confession. She said it happened around 6 weeks ago, he whispered. On that Henderson project. Late nights. Everyone stressed. She said Kyle stayed behind with her. They had drinks. And it just... happened. My mouth tasted like metal. 6 weeks ago. Right around the same time, Evan had been unusually affectionate. Right around the same time, he'd been talking about future in this careful, hopeful way, like he was trying to build something sturdy out of words. Did you know she was still seeing Kyle? I asked. Evan's shoulders shook. No. She said he was just a coworker. She said she regretted it as soon as it happened. I stared at him for a long second. Here's what nobody tells you. Betrayal doesn't always come with a villain's grin. Sometimes it comes with tears. Sometimes it comes with shaking hands and a voice that sounds terrified. Sometimes it comes wrapped in a situation you're supposed to treat gently because there's a baby involved. A baby that might not even exist yet as anything more than a line on a stick and a handful of cells. But already it was powerful enough to rearrange everything. Evan stopped pacing and looked at me like I held the verdict. Say something, he begged. I inhaled slowly through my nose. In my head, I could hear my sister Erin's voice, sharp and practical. Don't let emotion make decisions for you. Facts first. So that's what I did. I want the DNA test, I said. Evan blinked. You're not mad? I laughed once, short, Humorless. I'm furious. The word felt too small for what I actually was. Fury was fire. This felt like ice, like something freezing over in my chest. But getting loud won't change the facts, I continued. We need to know the truth. Evan's eyes filled again. Jenna said we have to wait until she's far enough along for the blood test. 9 weeks, I said automatically, because I'd already filed that thought away the second he said pregnant. My brain was doing math even while my heart was trying to crawl out of my ribs. Evan nodded fast. Yeah, she said 9 weeks. Then we schedule it, I said. He let out a breath like he'd been drowning. He crossed the kitchen in 2 steps and reached for me, pulling me into his arms. I'm so sorry, he whispered into my hair. I didn't even know. I swear to you, Natalie, I didn't know. I didn't hug him back right away. Not because I didn't love him, but because part of me was watching from somewhere above the scene, noticing details like a detective, the way his hands trembled, the way he clung like I was the only solid thing left. And another part of me, quiet, stubborn, newly awake, was already asking a colder question. If he didn't know, why does this still feel like something that was waiting to happen? When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red. We'll do the test. We'll handle it. Whatever it is, I want it to be with you. I nodded. And then, because I needed air, I stood up and walked to the bathroom like I was perfectly normal. I closed the door. I stared at myself in the mirror, my face pale, my lips slightly parted like I'd forgotten how to hold them closed. Then I leaned over the sink and threw up so quietly you could have mistaken it for a cough. When I looked up again, my eyes were watering. But my expression had changed. Not heartbreak. Not hysteria. Something sharper. Something that looked a lot like a plan beginning to form. Because if Jenna thought she could drop a baby-shaped grenade into Evan's life and expect everyone to just fall into line, and if Evan thought he could survive this by begging me to be steady while the ground cracked beneath my feet, they were about to learn something about me. I could be calm, I could be practical, and I could be done. That afternoon, when Evan left for work and the apartment finally went quiet, I sat at my dining table, my table, and called my sister Erin. She answered on the second ring. Natalie, everything okay? I stared at the sunlight on my floor, bright and careless, and I said very evenly, I need a medical question answered, and I need you to tell me the truth, not the comforting version. There was a pause. Erin's voice dropped. Talk to me. I took a breath. Then I began. Evan came home that night acting like the apartment belonged to his guilt. He moved too softly, like sound itself might accuse him. He set his keys down with a gentleness that felt performative. He offered to do the dishes, something he never did without being asked, then kept glancing at me like he was waiting for the moment I'd finally explode. But I didn't. I sat on the couch with my laptop open, not working, just letting the screen glow at my face while my mind assembled a list. Erin had called me back after her shift with a voice like steel wrapped in calm. Natalie, she'd said, prenatal paternity tests are accurate once there's enough fetal DNA in the mother's blood. You can technically do it earlier, but 9 weeks is safer for accuracy. And listen to me, this isn't about the baby. This is about the kind of mess you're standing in. I'd swallowed hard. I know. No, she'd corrected gently. You don't. Not yet. People who do this don't stop at one lie. They build a whole house out of them. Now, with Evan hovering in my peripheral vision, I felt that truth like a bruise. He finally sat beside me, knees bouncing. Jenna texted, he said quietly. I didn't look up. What did she say? He hesitated. She said she's scared. She said she's glad you're being mature about it. There it was, the little hook under the skin. Mature, reasonable, understanding. Words people used when they wanted you to swallow poison politely. My fingers tightened around the edge of the laptop. Did she say anything else? I asked. Evan exhaled. She asked if we could all talk, together. I turned my head then, slowly. All? He blinked. Me, you, and her. I held his gaze. And Kyle? Evan looked away so fast it was an answer. Evan, I said, my voice soft in a way that didn't match my chest. Kyle is part of this whether anyone likes it or not. He doesn't get to be a rumor. He doesn't get to hide behind her tears. She said he's not stable, Evan muttered, like he was repeating her script. She said he'd freak out. I smiled, small, cold. Good. Evan's head snapped up. What? Nothing, I said, and turned back to my screen. But inside, I was already moving. Because while Evan tried to survive this by being gentle, I was going to survive it by being accurate. That night, after he fell asleep, face turned toward the wall like he couldn't even look at his own conscience, I slid out of bed and padded into the living room. The apartment was dark except for the faint streetlight striping the floor through the blinds. I picked up Evan's phone from the charging cable. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt like a woman checking the locks after hearing a noise downstairs. His passcode was still my birthday. I almost laughed. The irony was so sharp it could have cut. I went to his messages, not because I wanted to torture myself, because I needed to know what reality I was standing in. Jenna's thread was there, right at the top. A long string of texts, recent, constant. Nothing graphic, nothing explicit. But intimacy wasn't always sexual. Sometimes it was the steady drip of familiarity. Jenna, I can't sleep. I feel sick. Evan, try to breathe. It's going to be okay. Jenna, I'm so scared you'll hate me. Evan, I don't hate you. Jenna, promise you won't let her talk you into abandoning me. Evan, Natalie isn't like that. Natalie isn't like that. Translation, Natalie will be the adult. Natalie will carry the weight. Natalie will do what's right. My throat tightened. Then I saw it, 3 months back, buried under the recent panic. A message from Evan to Jenna that made the room tilt. Evan, you can't keep doing this. You can't call me when you're lonely. I'm trying to move on. She'd replied, Jenna, then stop acting like you still care. And he'd replied, Evan, I do care. I can't be the person you lean on anymore. Not cheating. Not a smoking gun. But something worse in a way, an emotional door that had never fully closed. I took screenshots, every important piece, every line that showed the shape of their connection. Then I did what Aaron would have called covering my bases. I forwarded them to myself, from Evan's phone to my email. A little click of proof that I could hold in my hand if anyone tried to rewrite reality later. Because I'd seen how people like Jenna worked. They didn't just lie, they edited. They took your calm and turned it into cruelty. They took your boundaries and called them abandonment. I put Evan's phone back exactly where it was. Then I sat at my table and did the second thing on my list. I found Kyle. It took less time than it should have. People left digital footprints everywhere. LinkedIn, Instagram, a company website with a Meet the Team page. Kyle Morrison, project lead. Smiling headshot. A face that looked too clean for the kind of mess he'd stepped into. I stared at his profile for a full minute. Then I called him. He didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. Third time, he picked up, but he didn't speak. Just breathing. Suspicious. Tight. Kyle, I said calmly. This is Natalie Harper. Silence. I'm Evan's girlfriend, I added, because clarity is a weapon. We need to talk. I heard a sharp inhale, then the click of him hanging up. I didn't react. I waited exactly 5 minutes, then called again. This time he answered with a voice that tried to sound tough and failed. What do you want? He snapped. I want facts, I said. Jenna says she's pregnant. She says the baby could be Evan's. Or yours. A pause so long I could hear my own pulse. Then Kyle's voice cracked. No way. That's not a denial, I said evenly. That's panic. We use protection, he blurted. Every time. Every time. Interesting phrasing for someone claiming it didn't happen. I let the silence stretch until he filled it again, desperate to patch his own leak. I can't have a kid, he said. I'm getting married in 4 months. I froze. Excuse me, I whispered. Kyle said it like he was confessing to a crime. I'm engaged. My skin went cold. Her name? I asked. Another pause, then quieter. Aria. Aria. A woman who thought she was planning a wedding. A woman who had no idea her fiancé was in someone else's story as the work friend who texts good morning. I closed my eyes for a second, because suddenly the story wasn't just about Jenna's pregnancy. It was about the way she'd been weaving herself through multiple lives like thread, tying knots, pulling tight, pretending it was fate instead of manipulation. Kyle, I said, voice low and controlled, did Jenna tell you Evan and I live together? He hesitated. She said you two were basically roommates. I opened my eyes. The apartment around me felt different now. Like a stage set. Like I could see the seams. She said Evan was emotionally absent, Kyle continued quickly, like he'd been rehearsing this. She said he was moving out soon. She said she was leaving him. Lies stacked neatly, one on top of the next. A backup plan. A safety net. A fun option. I felt something inside me settle, hard and heavy. Not grief. Not jealousy. Recognition. Show me, I said. What? Show me the texts where she said that, I repeated. And don't tell me you deleted them. If you want me to believe you were tricked, prove it. Kyle swallowed audibly. I can send screenshots. Send them, I said. Now. He hesitated again, then muttered, okay. A moment later, my phone chimed. One screenshot, then another, then another. Jenna's words were right there, glowing in my hand like radioactive truth. Jenna, Evan's basically a roommate. He doesn't even touch me anymore. Jenna, I'm stuck until I can get my finances lined up. Jenna, you make me feel alive. I stared at them until my eyes burned. Then I forwarded every single one to myself. Kyle's voice on the line went small. Please, he said, don't tell Arya, I'm begging you. And there it was. The selfish center of it all. Not remorse, not responsibility, just fear of consequences. I'm not your relationship manager, I said quietly. You should tell her yourself. Please. I have to go, I cut in and ended the call. When the silence returned, it wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, because now I had two sets of receipts. Evan comforting an ex like she still belonged to him. Jenna painting Evan as a ghost boyfriend so Kyle would feel justified. And Kyle engaged, begging a stranger to keep his secret. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Aaron was right. This wasn't one lie. It was a whole house. And I could already feel the foundation creaking. The blood test appointment was in 2 days. Jenna thought she was walking into a clinic to secure her future. She had no idea she was walking into a room full of people who were done being edited. And in the dark, with my phone buzzing quietly beside me like a warning, I made a decision so clear it felt like a line drawn across my life. If the truth was going to explode, I was going to be the one holding the detonator. By the next morning, Jenna had shifted tactics. I could tell before Evan even opened his mouth. He hovered in the doorway of the bedroom while I was tying my shoes, his posture hesitant, careful, like someone approaching a skittish animal. She wants to talk, he said softly. Just us. No fighting, no accusations. I slid my foot into the heel and stood, meeting his eyes. What changed? He sighed. She's been thinking. She thinks maybe the test isn't necessary. There it was. The pivot. I didn't react right away. I just walked past him into the kitchen, poured myself coffee, and waited for him to keep going. People always do. She says biology shouldn't matter, Evan continued, following me. That families are about who shows up. She says whoever's there for the baby should be the father. I took a slow sip, bitter, too hot. And what do you think? I asked. He rubbed his face. I think she's scared. She's strategic, I corrected calmly. Evan flinched. Natalie. No, I said, not raising my voice. Listen to the words. Biology doesn't matter. Whoever shows up. Those aren't fear words. Those are persuasion words. He opened his mouth, closed it again. She also said, he added quietly, that you're being kind of cold. I smiled faintly. Cold, another favorite. Cold meant not crying on command. Cold meant not agreeing to absorb damage quietly. Cold meant facts. I'm being accurate, I said. There's a difference. Evan sank into a chair. She cried, Natalie. She kept saying she never meant to hurt anyone. Neither do arsonists, I said, setting my mug down. They still burn the house down. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. That hurt more than I expected. But I didn't soften. Because this was the moment where women like me were usually trained to compromise, to be gentle so no one else felt uncomfortable about the mess they made. And I wasn't doing that anymore. That afternoon, Jenna showed up, unannounced. She knocked softly, like she was visiting a hospital room. When I opened the door, she stood there in a loose sweater, hair pulled back, eyes red and swollen. One hand rested protectively on her stomach like a prop she'd rehearsed. Natalie, she whispered, like we were already sharing grief. I stepped aside without a word. She moved into the apartment like she still knew where everything was, glancing at the couch, the kitchen, the photos Evan and I hadn't taken down yet. Her eyes flicked to them, just for a second. Then she sat. I didn't want this to be ugly, she began, voice trembling. I never imagined we'd all be here like this. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Evan hovered between us, already pulled toward the role of mediator. I think we should talk about the test, Jenna said, looking at Evan, not me. I don't think we need it. I met her gaze. We absolutely do. Her eyes snapped to mine, startled by the lack of wiggle room. Why? She asked too quickly. What will it really change? The truth, I said. That usually changes things. She pressed her lips together, then tried a different angle. Even if it's Kyle's. Evan is the one who's here. Evan is the one who loves me. My chest tightened, not with jealousy, but with something sharper. You don't get to speak for Evan, I said quietly. Jenna's eyes filled with tears. I'm not trying to take anything from you. That's exactly what you're doing, I replied. Evan stepped in. Natalie. I held up a hand, never looking away from her. You cheated, I said evenly. You lied. You let two men believe different versions of reality. And now you're asking us to make a life-altering decision without verifying the most basic fact. She broke then, sobbing, shoulders shaking. Why are you being so cruel? She cried. I'm pregnant. I'm terrified. I felt the familiar tug, that reflex to comfort, to de-escalate. And I ignored it. I'm not cruel, I said. I'm prepared. She looked at Evan again, desperate. When the test proves it's yours, I expect an apology, she said through tears, for doubting me. The audacity landed in the room like a slap. Evan didn't respond. And that silence, told me more than anything he could have said. That night, after Jenna left, wrapped in pity and unresolved tension, Evan tried to touch me like we were still standing on solid ground. I let him. But it felt different, like muscle memory instead of desire. Because in my head, the pieces were already lining up. Kyle's panic, Jenna's scripts, Evan's guilt. Everyone wanted something from me. Understanding, patience, silence. They didn't realize I was done giving away things that cost me my future. The next morning, while Evan showered, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Kyle, please. She says you're poisoning Evan against her. I'll pay for whatever you want. Just don't tell Arya. I stared at the screen. Money. Abortion. Silence. Always the same currencies. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my email, added it to the growing folder I'd labeled, without irony, facts. Then I opened my calendar. The blood test appointment was scheduled for 2 days from now. Jenna thought it would be private. She thought it would be emotional. She thought she could cry her way into a rewritten ending. She didn't know I'd already spoken to the clinic. Didn't know I'd asked very specific questions about testing multiple potential fathers. Didn't know I'd memorized Arya's name. Didn't know I'd learned where Kyle worked. And as I watched Evan towel off, unaware of how close we were to detonation, I made one last adjustment to my plan. I wasn't just going to confirm the truth. I was going to make sure it arrived all at once. The morning of the appointment arrived dressed as something harmless. Gray sky, light traffic, the kind of quiet that tricks you into thinking nothing catastrophic is scheduled before lunch. Evan drove. Jenna sat in the passenger seat, hands folded over her stomach, breathing like she was practicing for a role. I sat in the back, watching the city slide by through the window, counting exits the way you do when you already know you're leaving something behind. No one spoke. The clinic was all glass and pale wood and artificial calm, a place designed to make emotions behave. Jenna clung to Evan's arm in the waiting room, whispering about nerves, about how grateful she was he was being there for her. She kept sneaking glances at me, like she was checking whether I'd crack. I didn't. The nurse called her name. Blood draw first. Routine. Then the nurse turned to Evan. We'll need your sample as well. Jenna nodded quickly, eager. Of course. I tilted my head slightly. Actually, I said, there are 2 potential fathers. The room shifted. Evan stiffened. Natalie! The nurse blinked, professional but alert. In that case, we'll need samples from all potential fathers for accuracy. Jenna's smile faltered. Kyle couldn't make it, she said quickly. He's unavailable. That's strange, I said, pulling out my phone. He texted me that he was on his way. Her head snapped toward me. You invited Kyle? She hissed. We all want the truth, I replied calmly. Don't we? The door slid open 20 minutes later. Kyle walked in like a man heading to his own sentencing. And behind him, Arya, tall, composed, one hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. The air went electric. Jenna stood up so fast her chair screeched. What is she doing here? Kyle didn't look at Jenna. He couldn't. He looked at the floor, shoulders slumped. I told her, he said quietly, everything. Arya's eyes moved to Jenna, not with rage at first, but with something colder. Assessment. So, Arya said slowly, you're the woman who's been sleeping with my fiancé. Jenna scoffed. I didn't know about you. Arya smiled without humor. That's funny. Kyle says you've known for months. The nurse stepped in gently. Let's all take a breath. By the way, Arya added, eyes never leaving Jenna, I'm pregnant too. 3 months. The waiting room went dead silent. Jenna's face drained of color. Evan looked like he'd been punched. Kyle closed his eyes. I felt something strange in my chest. Not satisfaction, not relief. Completion. The doctor eventually ushered us into separate rooms before the situation could combust further. Blood samples were taken. No one touched anyone. No one apologized. We left without speaking. A week later, we were called back. All of us. The doctor, older, steady, kind eyes, folded her hands. I have some unusual news, she said. Jenna leaned forward. Just say it. She looked at Evan first. You are not the biological father. His breath left him in a rush. Then Kyle. You are not the biological father either. Chaos. Jenna screamed. Kyle demanded a retest. Arya laughed once, sharp and hysterical. The doctor raised her voice gently. There's more. Silence fell again. She turned to Jenna. You are not currently pregnant. Your blood work indicates a chemical pregnancy. It was not viable. Your body has already miscarried. Jenna collapsed into sobs. But the DNA, Evan whispered. The fetal DNA we tested does not match either man, the doctor continued, which means there was a third potential father. The room felt like it tilted. I looked at Jenna. Who else? She cried harder. It didn't mean anything. A conference. One night. One night? Always. In the parking lot afterward, Jenna grabbed Evan's arm, then mine. Please, she begged. I need you. I stepped back. You needed me to lie for you, I said quietly. I won't. I got into my car alone and drove away. The parking lot emptied slowly, like the aftermath of a storm. I sat in my car for the full minute before turning the key, hands resting on the steering wheel, chest rising and falling in controlled, deliberate breaths. Not because I was about to cry, but because if I didn't stay still, I might scream. When I finally drove, my phone started lighting up almost immediately. Jenna. Missed call, missed call, missed call. Then a text. Jenna, you can't just leave me like this. I didn't respond. Another call, another. I pulled over once, not to answer, but to block her number. Evan didn't call. That hurt more than I expected. When I got home, the apartment felt unfamiliar, too quiet, like it had already decided which of us it belonged to. I packed a bag methodically. Clothes, laptop, documents, the things that were mine in ways that couldn't be argued later. That night, Evan finally texted. Evan, I don't know what to do. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I typed back. Me, you should figure that out without me. And I meant it. The next few days were chaos I watched from a distance. Jenna took to social media, spinning the story with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Vague posts about losing a baby, about being abandoned when I needed support the most. People rallied, until Arya commented. Not emotionally, not dramatically. Just facts. Screenshots, dates, names. The comments section turned brutal. Jenna deleted everything within hours. She showed up at my office the following Monday, red-eyed, frantic, demanding to just talk. Security escorted her out while she screamed about how heartless I was. My boss closed the door afterward and said, "Take the rest of the week off. Paid. Nobody needs this kind of drama." I went home and signed the lease I'd already prepared. Moved out 2 days later while Evan was at work. I left what wasn't mine. I left a note. Rent's covered until the end of the month. After that, it's on you. Jenna tried to contest it, claimed I'd kicked her out illegally. But she'd never been on the lease. She was just someone who'd stayed too long. Her sister reached out to apologize. She's always been like this, she admitted. Nice guys for stability, other guys for excitement. She called you her safety net. That phrase stuck with me, not because it hurt, but because it clarified everything. Kyle and Arya somehow stayed together. Counseling, new job, consequences wrapped in conditions. The conference guy's wife reached out too. She had receipts, hotel charges, messages, proof. She was divorcing him. Good for her. As for me, I'm in a smaller place now, quieter, cleaner. No mysterious texts at midnight, no emotional minefields disguised as compassion. Jenna sent one last message from a new number. Jenna, I hope you know you threw away something special. I replied once. Me, I know exactly what I threw away. Then I blocked her. People asked if I regretted insisting on the DNA test when I was leaving anyway. No, I needed closure. I needed protection. I needed to make sure my future couldn't be hijacked by someone else's lies. This wasn't strength. It was survival. And survival taught me one thing I won't forget. When someone shows you who they are, and when they ask you to carry consequences that aren't yours, you don't owe them softness. You owe yourself the truth.